Good evening. It's 6:30, so I'll call our meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Pasco School District Board of Directors. Just for your information, at 4:30 we had a study session where we talked about some secondary procedural updates. And I believe you can catch that on our YouTube channel eventually. Okay. So we will begin our meeting tonight with the flag salute by McGee Elementary School. Principal Ms. LP is here tonight. Like old Polster, I believe is how you say that, correct? Thank you.
All right, and you got my name right. Awesome, Mr. Christensen. Can I have our McGee students come right on up here? School Board President Kristensen, board members, and Superintendent Whitney. It is my pleasure to introduce the students who've been selected to represent James McGee Elementary School tonight. Ellie Wilson, and you guys can just raise your hand when I say your name. Ellie Wilson, Makana Garza, Cooper Gussenhoven, Ava Coral, Emmett Hill, Tiger Sital, and Nicole Cook are all recipients of our McGee Cares Attitude Award. CARES stands for Cooperation, Attitude, Respect, Effort, and Safety. We set high expectations for our students to show these attributes all around our school to adults and students alike. Our CARES Attitude Award winners were selected because they show a positive attitude at school. They demonstrate a growth mindset and a willingness to try, even when things are challenging. Staff and students alike recognize these students for their exceptional attitude. We are very proud of them. At this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, Mrs. LP, and thank you, students, for coming and leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So we've got a little token of appreciation for you that our student representatives will bring down to you. While they're doing that, could we have the parents of these students stand up so that we can acknowledge you? Okay. So thank you, students, for coming tonight, and thank you, parents, for bringing them and supporting them in this effort. Looks like we have a Boy Scout among them. So what troop are you in? Are you in a troop or are you in a pack? I'm in a troop. Perfect. What troop is it? What number, do you know? 159?
Is it on your shoulder?
Troop 159, they're a great troop. I can tell it's 159 because you are wearing a full uniform, young man. Good for you. So thank you, students, and thank you, Ms. LP.
All right, thank you.
All right, so could we get a roll call, please? Present?
Present.
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 So he will be joining us shortly. He is with his kids at a school event, I believe. So.
Present.
Present. Present.
All right, thank you. So could we get an agenda review?
There are no additions or changes to the agenda, and I would like to call your attention for a request for an executive session under 4231-101G for superintendent evaluation.
All right, thank you. So now we'll have a special recognition, Mr. Shane Ettinger.
Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Tonight we have the opportunity to honor and thank a group of outstanding volunteers and champions for education. You, the Pasco School District Board of Directors. School board members play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision for the school district, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability. They also provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of children. This year, you have been honored once again as a 2018 Board of Distinction by the Washington State School Directors Association. Now, board meetings may only be twice a month, but there are countless hours of preparation and research that go into every issue and decision. And besides the business that you see at our board meetings, our board members attend events and conferences, visit schools, and meet with legislators, both here at home and in Olympia. And of course, they are at everyone's favorite events, our graduations. A very conservative estimate puts your volunteerism at a minimum of 500 hours a year in service to the students, employees, and families of the Pasco School District. We appreciate the time and thought that you spend to make sure that the best interests of all Pasco students are served. This year, we'd like to again to honor your contribution to Pasco schools with a donation of books to every school library. Inside each book will be a sticker with your names listed to let students know that the book was donated in honor of each of you. This year, we purchased 3 books that were recommended by our school librarians. Our elementary schools will get 2 books this year, including this book for our younger students, Charlotte the Scientist is Squished by Camille Andros. This fun story follows Charlotte, a young rabbit who is a serious scientist. She solves important problems by using science, but she doesn't have enough space to work on her experiments. That's why she's squished. The book offers a playful introduction to the scientific method and is perfect for sparking an interest in STEM subjects. For our older elementary and middle school students, we have a Newbery Honor winner. It's this book, Hello Universe by Aaron and Trotta Kelly. This book is a funny and poignant neighborhood story about unexpected friendships told from 4 intertwining points of view, 2 boys and 2 girls. The novel celebrates bravery, being different, and finding your inner hero. The School Library Journal says this book has something to offer for nearly everyone: humor, self-acceptance, cross-generational relationships, and a smartly fateful ending. And this year, our high schools are headed into the world of fiction for the 3rd book in a trilogy that you've also purchased in years past. This is King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. King's Cage is a breathless 3rd installment to the Red Queen series that has been a long-time New York Times bestseller. Mary Barrow is the main character. She's a prisoner, powerless without her lightning and tormented by her lethal mistakes. She lives at the mercy of a boy who was once a friend, a boy made of lies and betrayal who is now the king. Reviewers say The King's Cage is perfect for fans of the George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series. Finally, we also have certificates for you and a copy of the Governor's Proclamation there at your desks. You can read the whereases for yourself a little later. It's now my pleasure to introduce Principals Diana Sisney and Wendy Manthei, who have a bit more to share with you tonight.
Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and board members. On behalf of each of our building administrators, we'd like to take this opportunity to show our appreciation for the countless hours that you spend behind the scenes guiding our district to ensure success for all Pasco students. We thank you for your dedication and your willingness to make the difficult decisions. It's evident in everything that you do. Student success is your highest priority. We'd like to present you with just a small token of appreciation and say thank you. And also thank you to Robinson art teacher, Linda Grover over here, that helped us pull it together. And we know that probably you've been watching some football and probably you've had some late nights. So hopefully you'll be able to use this and enjoy a little bit more time with your family. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi. Good, how are you? Thank you. I'm actually calling. Do we open it? I don't know. Look at the little cards they made. That's so
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did somebody already show it? All right, so this is a pizza box, as you notice, and any way you slice it, you are amazing. And then there's, I think one of these is an envelope with something in it. Actually,
Yeah,
maybe they
this
all
is
have
cool.
something in it.
It has the
Yeah,
plus, right?
don't just,
And it's a little pen you can use on your phone, and it's a regular pen. Really cool device.
yes.
These are adorable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thanks to the students who did the artwork on this. This is great.
I have dedicated a bookcase at home with all of the things like this that we've received over the years, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I have my school board stuff in it, and then the little things that I get alongside of it, and I appreciate it. It's nice to have thank you, so thanks.
And it's in this handy little box that we can fold up and take it home with us.
Very cool. Thank you.
It is. Yeah, so so in the, there's an envelope there.
Oh, and we got pizza.
That's the best kind of pizza.
Pizza box. This is really cute. That's clever. Thank you. That was really cute.
Okay. Putting my box back together and we'll get back to business.
So what school, was it Robinson that made the coaster? Thank you, these are great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, principals, and thank you, students.
That is clever.
How did you?
So we're not going to be distracted by the smell of pizza all night, but thank you. So now we are on agenda item number 6. This is audience comments. This is a portion of the meeting where we allow people to come up and address the board if there's something on your mind that you would like to share with us, or this is your opportunity to do that. We will give you 2 minutes. So if you want to come up, Mr. Wilson.
Superintendent Whitney and members of the board, I'm Scott Wilson. I'm a local resident and union member. I also want to thank you for the work you've done as a board and congratulate you on the award that you've received. That wasn't actually my reason for getting up here, though. I noticed that there is a communities and schools section that we'll be listening to or learning about. And I just wanted to bring to your attention the connection between that effort and the recently passed policy of the National Education Association for our pillars of community schools, of which family and community involvement is one of those main pillars. So I'm looking forward to hearing about communities in schools. I'm a little familiar with them and some of the work they've done elsewhere and within our district, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. But I wanted to make sure I'd communicated the connection between that work and what, as a union, we spent a year going through before passing the policy this last July to recommend this as a structure for our school systems. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anybody else? Last call. All right, so we will close this portion of our meeting. Moving on, could we get an approval of the minutes of our previous meeting?
Mr. President, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 11th, 2018.
Second?
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the regular meeting minutes for December 11th, 2018. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the minutes are approved. Now consent agenda. So we've got personnel, warrants, approval of new Columbia River Elementary School and Middle School Number 4 site grading and contract, approval of highly capable students program annual plan I-grant application form package, Three Rivers Elementary site preparation change order number 1, out-of-state student travel for Chiawana High DECA students to attend sports business night in Portland, Oregon, and out-of-state student travel for Pasco High DECA students to attend sports business night in Portland, Oregon. That is the consent agenda. Could we get a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Could we get a roll call, please? Yes.
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 Okay, so we have no action items tonight. So we'll move on to reports. Looks like we have a district boundary revision update.
So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Susan Arias, who has been in front of the board multiple times around a couple different large bodies of work that's been underway in the District. 1, the long-term facilities management plan, and 2, a boundary revision process in preparation for the addition of 2 new elementaries, expansion of Stephen, and a new middle school. The purpose of tonight's presentation is for her to give an update as a result of a study session that she delivered prior to break. We are not going to be asking for any definitive action, but instead kind of a board nod to the direction that we are continuing as we explore. The largest topic that she'll be covering that came from the study session was approaches to our dual language programming. So with that, I would turn the time over to Dr. Susan Arias.
Thank you. Okay. So good evening, President Christensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Whitney. As Superintendent Whitney shared, this is an update to the process regarding boundaries and some of that discussion that's been taking place. As you know, these are the guiding principles for the process that we've been using to guide our review of various scenarios. They've been really helpful. Also, as you are aware through the process, the dual language program has been a topic of great interest. The district special program staff and leadership team met to explore and consider community, parent, and staff feedback regarding the program. And then this was followed by a boundary committee meeting to delve deeper into the feedback, but also consider the information from program staff. From the analysis and considering all of the input and feedback, 3 possibilities emerged. One is to establish a magnet school focused solely on dual language. Another would be to establish a regional system where dual language is offered in different regions of the district, and which would serve students in the school from neighboring schools. Or the district can begin to expand and scale the dual language programming to more schools with the goal of expanding it district-wide. A magnet program of sorts would basically be a single school designated for dual language programming, and it would only serve students participating in the program. The school would not be a boundary school, and students would come from across the district to participate. This possibility, this option, would not align with the guiding principle of having neighborhood schools in the district, and it would limit the scope of dual language expansion that we would like to continue working toward across the district. So that would be what a magnet school would be. Regional programming, this option would allow dual language classrooms at specific schools in different regions of the district. And it could possibly create some overcrowding because the regional schools would provide services to students from neighboring schools in the dual language programming. The program obviously is currently not in place, so getting it set up and established would be a significant factor to consider in terms of getting it up and running. And to a large degree, it's also in conflict with the guiding principle of having neighborhood schools. But it does, however, allow for the beginning of dual language expansion. The third possibility is to begin implementing dual language learning in all schools, which would align well with the board's direction in terms of finding ways to make sure that we're providing a variety of opportunities for learning two languages at every one of our schools. And we've begun to explore that more this year. Students in programs, current programs would remain at their schools, and through the phasing in of the program, more students would have access to it at their own neighborhood school. The program would be scaled to match the level of interest of neighborhood families, and this option would align with the guiding principle of neighborhood schools and allows for forward movement of the district's effort to expand it across the district. So those are the three possibilities. Next steps would include additional boundary and community meetings, as well as board updates, specifically on January 22nd in a board study session and report. The district will bring to the board a boundary proposal for Three Rivers Elementary. That's Elementary 16, which opens in 2019. And we will also provide an update on the boundary work as it relates to the dual language program. Board action will be requested at the February 12th board meeting on boundaries for Three Rivers Elementary, just to kind of provide you with a little bit of a preview for where we're headed. And as Superintendent Whitney shared, having considered all the input and feedback, we'd like to continue with the committee exploring what boundary revisions would look like in terms of looking forward to expanding dual language across the district. And that's where we are right now. More to come, and it's been a complex process, but it's been great, and I think people have participated really well. And I know we have one of our members of our committee here this evening, a lot of work on the part of their effort as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reyes. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Dr. Reyes?
I had a question about, so we're being asked to take action on February 12th for one school's boundary. Does that include picking one of the boundary scenarios for the entire district? Or are we saying we're going to choose the boundaries for Three Rivers and then later on we're going to choose the boundaries for all schools across the district?
The boundary scenario for Three Rivers Elementary will be primarily focused on the area that would be impacted for that school because it opens August 2019, and we want to do everything we can to provide as early as possible information for our families for planning. However, that proposal could have what potential boundary changes might look like in 2020 for maybe our Central and East Pasco schools once sixth grade moves to the middle schools. With regard to Columbia River, there could be an idea of what that could look like, but it won't be finalized. So we'll be bringing back to you another update and request for considering proposals that are more refined for Columbia River Elementary, and then, of course, our middle schools.
Okay. So I think, to repeat what you said, I think what I understand is on February 12th, we will or we will take action on the boundaries for the entire district for the fall of 2019 school year at the elementary school level. And then those boundary scenarios, the greater boundary scenarios, we would later take action, which would be for the fall of 2020.
Right.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
another way. Thank you.
I just think a kind of a underscore to the work that I wanted to highlight here is while the board action is happening in phases, the work has been happening in coordination. So there's been a very thoughtful and intentional approach so that the two are a coordinated effort. So while we're splitting board action, does not mean the thought around the whole district-wide solution has been split. It's been a very coordinated effort. The phased-in approach to board action allows us to get moving on things like staffing, et cetera, for 2019, while also at the same time bringing the board up to speed around what the rest of the boundary revision processes will look like.
So, although we are taking action on February 12th on Three Rivers boundaries, hopefully that's structured so that there's not a huge impact and another big shuffle the following year, because we've been through that, and that's not fun.
And we're trying very hard to do everything we can to have it be as
Yeah.
smooth as possible.
So we're in schools right now, and while they're all a little overcrowded, we're making it work. And so next year, we'll open up another school, we'll pull in those that come in, but and then the following year, we'll open another one. So we would expect that every school next year, at least those over near Three Rivers, will be fairly light, and then the big shuffle will take place the following year when we open the middle school and move sixth grade. And,
Correct.
okay. All right. So is there any other questions on boundaries? Anybody have any comments on that? I have a question on the, or just some comments on the dual language portion of this. So we've got three different options: the magnet option, the regional option, and then the expand and scale option. Do we have a direction that we're going there? Do we have a method for selecting? Is that going to be the boundary committee? How is that going to be determined?
From the district perspective, having worked hard with our committee and then our program staff to really review all the input and feedback, as well as questions from our community, our parents, our staff, and our students, we'd like to move forward in further exploring elementary boundary options that would reflect a dual language expansion across the district. And that's work that remains to be even more explored than we've done to this point, because it means, some potential changes in terms of opportunities for children in the fall in additional schools, not just the current schools. That's the direction that we may go in, and based on what we've learned to date and what aligns with our guiding principles and so forth.
Okay.
My question, and it might be the same one you have, will the recommendation that the board gets come from the district? Will it come from the community builders? Or will it come from the professional group that you put together? Who will be making the recommendation to us?
It would come from the district after having vetted as thoroughly as possible all of the input, all the feedback, having really thoughtful discussions, taking the time to engage our stakeholders really well, knowing that obviously there's not a perfect solution, but it is, we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah, certainly all of them have advantages. I mean, the magnet school, where you have a collection of all the teachers that are teaching dual language in one place, and they can collaborate there together, that's good. But then you're limited because we're a pretty broad district. We've got 17, or we'll have 17 elementary schools, and trying to bring kids in from all 17 that have an interest in it would be a challenge. So the regional, again, then we'd have to pick some schools in dedicated areas where we have that. Gives us a little more, a little more centralization of the program, a little more collaboration as opposed to in individual schools. But then again, you've got regional schools and some travel for some students. Whereas if we do the expand and scale, now we're distributing our dual language teachers across the district, so there's not as much chance for collaboration, but more opportunity for students to stay in their home school. So there's 3 options with pros and cons to each, and somehow that decision's going to be made. And I'm curious to know how that's going to happen. So I'm just wondering, is there a process that we're going to use to say at the end, this is what we did and this is why we're doing it? Because I'm sure there are people who prefer each option, and they're going to want to say, well, why didn't you choose mine? Or why didn't you choose the option I favor? And I think we've got to have something that we can show them that this is the process we went through and this is why we ended up where we are. So I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot and have you tell us what that is, but I would certainly recommend that we have something like that when this decision is made. Okay?
Duly noted, thank you.
I appreciate the work that has gone into all of this thus far. Just listening to the community's voices on this dual language, we have, the boundaries are always hard because you get so many conflicting voices, and I'm excited at where some of these things will go, because I think there might be some real win-wins. At least that's what I see so far, is some possibility for some real win-wins. And I'm sure that, when you get done with a boundary, never is everybody happy, and that's tough. But I appreciate how thoughtful. As I've gone through this before, I feel like we've learned a lot from past mistakes, and I really appreciate the thoughtful nature of trying to really give the community what they want, and taking those surveys and finding out that community schools was the #1 ask of parents and committee members combined. And so anyway, there was a lot of, and I think it was the board too. Was it community schools is the board first priority? What? Neighborhood schools. Yeah, neighborhood schools. So anyway, so I love the approach that we're taking this time. I appreciate the work. The Community Builders has been immensely helpful to us as a board in so many different decisions as we are, formalizing lots of things across the district. So we're always comparing apples to apples instead of so many other things. So we really appreciate the work there.
Thank you.
I do have one more question on the language. When are we going to get a recommendation on that? Is that something that we're looking at for this coming school year? The following school year, the dual language, on which option we're going to take and when we implement it? Am I not being clear? Okay, so we're going to choose one of these, right? I mean, it's going to be expand, it's going to be a magnet school, it's going to be regionalized schools, or it's going to be expand and scale. Are we expecting to implement something like that this coming school year, or would we wait till the following school year?
So there's a number of moving parts here. We have a bilingual committee that's meeting to discuss some program pieces. They're meeting next week, this week, next week. We've got a meeting at the end of the month or the end of this week, where we're engaging with Mrs. Sisney, Mr. Morales, and the program staff. And then we have our current dual language teachers that we need to engage with. So there's a lot of moving parts in terms of the definition of when all of these things can happen. I think there's a real interest from the district's perspective, and I think a lot of us that would be very excited to do some kind of fairly significant expansion in 2019 if we can. Now, that being said, we want to, our experts who are our teachers need to be engaged in that conversation. We're not going to make that in isolation as district staff. And we need to make sure that whatever we do, that we can do a high quality job of identifying staff, training staff, et cetera. So there's a real balance that needs to happen within the next really few weeks to come up with a comprehensive, high-quality recommendation that engages our teacher experts, our program staff experts, and our community. So Susanna's got a pretty tight timeline over the next 3 weeks to pull together a comprehensive recommendation. We're all really excited about it, and we're very appreciative of all of the boundary committee members who have been amazing in digging in and really understanding the complexity of this kind of expansion. So I know it's a little bit of a broad
Well,
answer, but I guess the truth is we're not sure yet because we haven't engaged all the
That's-
right people.
That's fair enough. I'm not asking for any hurry. I think it's better to take our time and get it right than to rush into something just so that we can have it ready to roll out in 2019. So, we're going to be making changes again in 2020 when the elementary school 17, we've got Two River Elementary School. So I believe that's Columbia River then, the 17. So yeah, Three Rivers is next year, and Columbia, it is Columbia River. Columbia River's the following year. So we're going to be doing some shuffling again, if that's the right time to do it. I guess the real question is so this next year, assuming we don't make any changes this year, we're going to have McClintock and Angelo again as our dual language schools, at least for Spanish. So, and a continuation of that program there, I would expect, kind of like it is. I don't.
The whole kind of, I don't know if tension is the right word, but the balance of this whole piece is to honor what's currently in place while we make a transition.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the details that we need to work out. Spencer, we met with Spencer, our consultant, this afternoon around really digging into numbers, and it's almost kind of like on a individual student basis to try to figure out, okay, if we phase certain things in and out, what does that do to numbers? What's the long-range plan? How quickly can we reduce overcrowding? And if we do it too quickly, does it undermine the quality of the ultimate recommendation? So those are the pieces that will be worked out over the next few weeks. It's a complex task, but one that people have really dug in, and there's some thoughtful consideration. And like I said, we have really smart people in this organization that'll get it worked out in a way that's best for our kids.
Well, I apologize for walking in late. I had an important event for two of my children I could not miss, and so I missed some of the discussion, but I just comment briefly, and I was able to review the presentation and meet with Ms. Whitney earlier this afternoon. But this is super exciting. I mean, this is a positive, exciting thing. Our communities wanted some expansion of dual language for many years. Every year there are way more families that want to participate than that are able to in our current model. And so, but change is hard, and so we're kind of re-examining, is there some other ways we can do this to expand the opportunities for more students in our district that want to participate, and it looks like we're going to be able to do that. And so I think that's exciting, but change is hard, so I'm sure there'll be a little bit of uneasy feelings, but overall, I agree with Mr. Christensen, we want to get it right, but I think we can do that with expanded opportunities, honoring the commitment that students and families have already made that are in the program currently, that will be able to honor what they've committed to and what we've committed to them, while also expanding the opportunity for more students to participate. So I really only see positives coming from this, and even though a little bit of the change might be hard initially.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. So we will, if anybody in the audience wants to give the board their input, you're welcome to do that at this time. You don't have to, but now's your chance to say it publicly. You can always send us information offline, so I would just make one final comment. I think it was when we made our changes to McClintock boundaries, and the parents at Angelo said, look, we'd rather, I may not be getting this correct, so Ms. Sisney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they would rather endure and stay in their school, endure a bigger school, than to be shuffled around. And so I think as we go through these changes, recognizing we're going to make some changes this year and we're going to make some changes again next year, this next 2019-20 school year, we might have some schools that are crowded, and I think better to do that. We'll make accommodations for it than to shuffle them twice. So just keep that in mind as we go through this process. All right. Thank you, Dr. Reyes.
Thank you.
All right, so now we've got extended study / discussion, and we've got, this is where we're going to talk about the community and schools portion that Mr. Wilson talked about.
So it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Boles to the podium. He has some guests that will also be co-presenting with him tonight. I do just want to provide a quick broad frame for this presentation. As a board, when you attended WASDA, a number of the sessions that you were brought back as areas of interest have to do with social emotional development of our students and what we're doing in Pasco School District that aligns with some of the things that you heard at WASDA. So you'll be seeing now through the spring kind of a series of focus on social emotional programs in Pasco. So this is the first, community and schools, and with that I will hand the time over to Eric Boles.
Good evening, Board President Christensen. Got to adjust the microphone here, I apologize. Superintendent Whitney and members of the board. It's my pleasure to present on our work around communities and schools. I was really looking for a segue to get the presentation started, and I think both Superintendent Whitney and Mr. Wilson couldn't have done a better job than they did. I think like Superintendent Whitney said, really the convergence of the themes that came out of WASA, the policy work done by a number of organizations, including OSPI and the National Education Association and others, really all converging around, sometimes our best effort in helping kids learn is really removing the barriers that kids face in the context of their learning. I also find that presentations are generally, the success of presentations are generally inversely proportional to the amount of time I spend on the microphone. So I've got a series of friends that I'm going to introduce and then really let them talk about the work that they do. I just want to share personally, I think Communities and Schools of Benton and Franklin County is one of the most effective organizations that we have at our disposal, not only in Pasco, but in our bi-county region, to really help children and families in ways that when I served as a principal way back at the turn of the century, we weren't even thinking about, let alone having access to. So I think you'll find the presentation to be not only enlightening, but engaging. I think you'll be really well pleased with the work that's been done in Pasco to date. So I'm going to try to buttress the presentation with what I think will be a few obvious questions toward the end. So if I were consuming this presentation by the end, some of the questions I would ask would be, well, why on earth do we not have one of these communities and school site coordinators in every building? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the shorter answer is, we have to balance the revenues that we have in the district with a variety of other programming considerations and constraints. And then one of my friends that I introduce later, I'm sure will tell a couple of anecdotal stories about, because I've worked with these folks for years, they'll let you know that they're often putting the brakes on me in terms of my enthusiasm around expansion. And one of the things I've really come to appreciate about Communities and Schools as an organization, both at the state level and in Benton and Franklin County, is they're very careful about not only who they hire, but how collaborative they are in the hiring process, in their individual site assessment processes, and then they're extremely careful about who they place in positions, and their track record in terms of creating successful partnerships because of the high quality personnel that they recruit and place in our schools, I think really speaks for itself. So I wanted to get some of those things out of the way, and I'm going to introduce just a couple of really people I consider dear friends, who then I'll turn it over to them because they can walk through their organization and their data much better than I can. They also have a number of folks that they brought with them this evening who work directly with our students, and I think they'll pepper the presentation with some wonderful anecdotal stories. And I noticed that Wendy Mantha is here. She's still awake, and so is John Walwork. And they may be moved by the Spirit and come up and share maybe directly some of the impacts that are occurring in their buildings as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my good friends, Kathy Clayton, who's a board member at Communities and Schools. Kathy is a local resident. She's a longtime educator, retired, and also was the head of ASCD, which is a curriculum curriculum organization in our state for a number of years, so really familiar with the inner workings of the schools and still devoting a fair amount of her time in a board member's capacity. And then we're also fortunate to have Jolie Neifelt with us this evening, and Jolie serves the organization as the lead program administrator. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy and Jolie and let them just walk through the presentation.
Move the microphone here. Thank you, Eric. And so President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. As Eric said, I'm Kathy Clayton, member of the board. We are a very young organization. We started in 2014, and I was fortunate to be with Communities in Schools from the very beginning. So I've served as the chair of the board for 2 years and currently serve as the secretary. I wanted to give you an idea why I'm involved in Communities in Schools. First of all, I moved here 4 years ago, just before Communities in Schools got started. I moved here because my son, who actually is a teacher in Pasco School District, wanted me to come down and babysit his children. So that's what I'm here for. And I wanted to get involved in something in the community because I had not been in this community previously, but I had served for 32 years as an elementary principal, and actually was in several school districts across the state. The reason I got involved in Communities in Schools is that I always wished that I'd had a site coordinator in my school. I had so many situations where I had students and families that had so many needs beyond what the school could provide. And I also had a lot of community organizations coming to me, like Lutheran Family Services, for example. They would come to my office and say, do you know that we can do this for your kids? We just need to know who the kids are that have these needs. And it was so frustrating for me as an elementary principal not having someone who could help me provide the information to families and also provide information to these community organizations. The school counselor and I worked very hard to do that, but I feel that we would have been far more successful had we had a site coordinator. So knowing that that's what the program was, being able to get totally involved at the ground level, being able to be on the board to help serve, being on a lot of the interview teams, hiring a lot of these fabulous site coordinators really has helped me understand and made me feel that I've been able to give back in that capacity. When we started with Communities in Schools, we only had 9 site coordinators, and now we are in 26 schools with 27 site coordinators. So in a very short amount of time, we have become the largest agency in the state. Even though there are Communities in Schools organizations in places like Renton and Federal Way, Seattle, Spokane, we in the Tri-Cities are the largest, and we are continuing to grow. And as Eric said, one of our challenges is how do we grow and do it carefully so that we're being fiscally responsible and yet meeting the needs of all these schools that have a need for our services. So that's our biggest challenge. We're working very hard to make that happen. So it's a very exciting place for me to serve. So I'm going to introduce Jolie Neifelt, who is our program director. She's going to be able to give you a lot more information about what the program does. So, Jolie.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having us. Thank you, Superintendent Whitney, and to the board for having us and allowing us to share our work with you tonight. We're always thrilled for the opportunity to do that. I am not as smart as the technology that's up here, so I'm going to advance a few slides so you have something to reference as I talk through
I'm
some
going to disagree with you, Jolie.
data
You
points.
are. You just need that little button right there.
So I know that you received this information in advance, but a little bit of history about us. So founder Bill Milliken founded the program in the 1970s. on the premise that programs don't change people, relationships do. And that really is the embodiment of everything that we do at communities and schools with our staff and the students that we serve and families that we serve. So while the organization is 40 years old, over 40 years old now, as Kathy said, we here in Benton Franklin are a mere 4 years old. So just a little bit about the return on investment for our program. So for every dollar that's invested in communities and schools, there's an investment back to the community in the amount of $11.60. And that's just in future productivity of our students as productive members of their communities. When they go on to receive higher paying jobs, they're buying their own homes, investing in their own community businesses, then we see that return on investment in the students that we're supporting now through the services that we provide. The way that we accomplish the services that we provide, integrated student supports, we provide a variety of services to students. So our site coordinators in each building serve a caseload of 45 students that are receiving intensive individualized support. So we can connect those students and their families to things like healthcare, to counseling, to employment assistance. That's both for students and for parents that we're serving. College and career prep, mentoring, tutoring, and a variety of other services. So we really individualize the supports to the needs of the students and their families. So no two students are case managed the same. We really work hard to understand the students, the challenges that they're facing, as well as the strengths that they're bringing, so that we can really capitalize upon those. Locally, as Kathy said, we've been here since 2014, and we have grown from 9 original sites to 26 sites with 27 site coordinators currently. And as Eric shared with you, he would like us to grow at a much faster rate than we have. But it's very important to us as an agency that we grow with integrity and sustainability in mind, and that we have the support as far as our administrative staff to really make sure that we are training and providing the support necessary to our site staff to deliver quality programming. Pasco site coordinators, this year we've expanded to 5 sites from 3. So we are in Chihuahua, Stevens, Emerson, Marie Curie, and Robinson Elementaries. We started in Curie in January of 2017 and have grown the other 4 sites since that time, with Stevens being our most recent addition this school year. A little overview of the services that we provided last year. We served over 2,000 students through school-wide supports last year. That's everything from just attendance programming that impacts on a school-wide level, so just bringing awareness, of course, to the importance of positive attendance, having our staff available to provide community resource referrals to anybody that walks through the door. So we are not simply there to serve the students that we are case managing. For any parent, any staff person, anyone in the building that comes seeking a resource, and we're there as and able to provide that. So that could be a student that is hungry and simply seeking a snack. That could be a family that might be seeking mental health or counseling services out in the community. It could be a parent that is looking for some assistance with employment seeking. It could be a student that's seeking those services. So we don't limit what we are able to offer on that scale to the students that we're serving through case management. We're there as a building-wide resource. We served 87 students through case management last year. We are well on track, outpacing that this year. So currently, when I last looked this afternoon, we have 134 students that are on caseloads for our site coordinators currently. And that continues to grow. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, our expectation is that they would be serving a minimum of 45 students by the end of the school year. Those numbers were a little lower for our site coordinators last year. It's really important to us when a brand new site coordinator comes into a brand new building that they put the time and effort necessary into building strong relationships within their building with the staff, administration of that building, in order to form the partnerships that are necessary for us to really be successful and work in a collaborative way. And finally, almost 1,100 parents were engaged through, again, those school-wide supports. So that's our presence before and after school, being available and present, and just kind of having that visibility within the school. We're at parent-teacher conferences, open house, things of that nature, where we're just increasing our visibility, helping students and parents understand what it is we're there to do and how we can best serve. A brief look at the demographics of the students that we served last year through case management. And some additional data points around risk factors for the students that we served. 96% of our students are economically disadvantaged. Something to note, 24% of our students that we served through case management last year experienced homelessness at some point during the school year. So that can be families that are doubled up, living with friends or family, in shelters, living in motels, sometimes having to sleep in their cars or elsewhere. So living in RVs, things of that nature. So it's a pretty significant number of students if you consider that we had 87 students being served through case management last year. 63% of our students are English language learners, and 15% of them had an incarcerated parent. For our case managed student outcomes last year, 93% of those students that had an attendance goal made an improvement towards that, and 100% of our students with a behavior goal showed improvement in that area. 100% of our students at the high school level were promoted or graduated, and 100% of them improved behavior. So one thing to note with that, we did not place our Chihuahua site coordinator until mid-February of last year. So we only served 5 students through case management at Chihuahua last year. This year we're fortunate enough to have 2 site coordinators who currently have a combined caseload of 44 students. So when we placed Erica last year, it really gave an opportunity to create a strong foundation for what the work would look like this year, allowed her the opportunity to really start to build those relationships that I spoke of earlier with staff, and just creating that awareness and familiarity with the program. Some data around our school-wide services that were provided last year. Just a couple of things to note here. When we indicate that we had 2,300 students that received food last year, there's duplication in those numbers. So of course we're tracking that every time a student comes in to see the site coordinator, whether it's for a snack or maybe for food to take home for the weekend. If there's not enough. If we did, last year we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with Second Harvest to do some mobile food distributions on site at schools. So things of that nature where we may have had repeat students or repeat families accessing those services. But this gives you just kind of a short snapshot of those school-wide services that I mentioned that are available to anybody. Another point to note is around our mental health. We know that number of students served is higher. The way that we are documenting services and have in the past documented our services is sometimes the way that we input those into our system. You can have multiple services rolled into one interaction. And so this year we really have a heavy emphasis on making sure that we are capturing those mental health services accurately so that we can report out on those with greater acuity. I thought there was one more slide after that. I also, before I turn it over to Erica and Brenda, I did want to also just make one note of what the program looks like when we come into a site. So we are very intentional in our work. The site coordinator comes into a building. The first thing that they do is they start to build, with the principal's input, they're building a school support team. So they want to invest, they want to build a team of those in the building that are invested in the work that we're doing. So typically that's the principal, the school counselor, the home visitor, if there is one, the assistant principal, and any other staff that really can inform the work that we do. From that, a needs assessment is conducted so that we know where some of the gaps in services are in the building and where the greatest needs are, as well as what are the existing supports and resources that are in the building, so we aren't out and trying to duplicate services. So we take a look at that. We build a school-wide plan. So as I said, we have a school-wide goal that's established for every building that we're in. All of our Pasco sites have an attendance goal. So that is established, as well as a plan for how are we going to identify those students that are in greatest need or would most greatly benefit from case management. So they're working with those support teams to identify what teams do they need to be plugged in, what meetings do they need to be involved in, how are they going to know who these kids are, as well as who are they then going to reach out to as they start interacting with these kids to share back what it is that they're learning and how they can best be supported by the school at large. We are not one-woman shows in the building that we're in, so everything that we do is to foster collaboration and partnership. We really want to make sure that we are working strongly with our building teams and the staff at large to make sure that students are not only feeling comfortable coming to our staff and our site coordinators and that their parents are coming to them, that they also are feeling more comfortable about engaging at large with the school and with the staff. So For each student that receives case management, we identify an individualized goal for them. We monitor that goal at the grading period formally throughout the school year so we can track their progress. We can evaluate if the plan that we have put in place is working. Is it effective? Do we need to tweak some things? And of course, we're doing that with the student and with their parents' input when that's possible. So we always seek to have that family engagement piece. We're always seeking to engage the parent in what we're doing, of course, the students in what we're doing, so that there's buy-in across the board for that student's success. And so with that, as we evaluate their progress towards that goal, we are looking at who else can we bring in from the community to help support that. What types of partners can we bring in to help support those goals? So with that, I know that I'm tired of listening to my voice at this point. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to hear from Brenda Gonzalez and Erica Martinez, who are our two site coordinators at Chihuahua, so they can really talk to you about what the work looks like in practice and how they have worked to build those teams within their school to have a really strong collaboration and successful program. So thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Brenda Gonzalez. Erica Martinez. And I'm a site can you hear me? I'm a site coordinator at Chihuahua. Like Jolie mentioned, I work with freshmen and sophomore, and Erica works with juniors and seniors. And as they mentioned, we build at the beginning of the trimester, we really build those relationships with staff and anyone that really can really connect us to the students. And part of our responsibility is to attend wing meetings, and that's pretty much going to each grade level to their weekly meetings, and that includes the administrator, the counselor, the student achievement specialist, and some the SAS, the student achievement specialist. I just mentioned that, and pretty much we go there on a weekly basis, and we learn more about ways that we can support the students that they brought to the table, and in ways that we as a program can help them diminish any barriers that they have to their education. At the beginning of this trimester, the first trimester, I was referred to a freshman or a sophomore student, and she was having attendance issues. And many of the staff didn't know what was going on with her situation. And we tackled her together. And it was hard at first because she was very quiet, one-word responses. Sometimes she wouldn't speak. We would ask, like, what's going on? How come you don't go to class? Is there anything that we can do? And sometimes she'd just be very quiet. Most of the time she would just go to our office, go to the corner, and just sit there during her lunch and just look at the ground. And it would creep some of our other students out. And but we respected her. We told her, this is a safe space for you. If you want to speak, you can speak. If you don't, then that's okay. And sorry, I'm a little nervous. Eventually, she was able to slowly open up, slowly feel comfortable with us. And yet, even now, sometimes she still has those moments where she still goes to that corner and feels a little shy or just withdrawn. And this second trimester, she started going to her classes. She started staying after school to do some work with us. If we can't help her, then we take her to the teacher. If we can't help, with certain situations, we're there to advocate for her. And I think that's one of the great things about our program, is that we're there to support the student at their pace and whenever they feel comfortable. So thank you for having us, and thank you for supporting our program.
I would be remiss if I didn't introduce you to two of our other site coordinators who came to support their PASCO cohort tonight. So Evelyn Rios is our site coordinator at, you can raise your hand, Evelyn, at Marie Curie, and Lucila Santiago is our site coordinator at Emerson. And I'd also like to just acknowledge Wendy Manthai and John Walwork for being incredibly supportive principals. And the success of our program is so contingent upon having strong support in the buildings and from our administrators. So I can't say enough about how much they've done to just really embrace our staff, make sure they're well integrated into the school, and just connected so that they quickly brought them up to speed, so that they had a strong, firm understanding of their buildings, of the needs of the students, and how they could best serve. They're very available to our site coordinators, and that is not the case everywhere that we are. I can say in Pasco, we have incredibly supportive building administrators for all the sites that we're in, and it makes a huge difference, not only to our staff and their integration into the building, but just the sense that students and families have in feeling as though they can, that their school is a place of community and a place that they're welcomed. And so I can't say enough about that. So we really appreciate your support.
And I'd just like to close by saying I really define the work of communities and schools in a nutshell as caring teachers, caring principals, caring counseling staff eventually have to go home and go to sleep. And what communities and schools does is they pick up so much of that legwork, coordinating with agencies, reaching out to families, creating spaces for students, providing access to food, all the things that all of us who went in education for the right reasons, would spend as much time and effort as we can. And in fact, so many educators give money out of pocket. So to have the extra resource and the extra resource targeted so intentionally to help our kids of greatest need and their families, as well as really integrate community resources in a way that I personally hadn't seen in my educational career in the Tri-Cities prior to communities and schools coming and being a presence in our area, has made a great difference. And I'd like to thank all the ladies who came for their time, and hopefully you found the presentation enlightening, enjoyable, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you others for coming. So, does anybody have any questions? So
are you on site every day then, morning to the time that how are you funded then? Is this government funds, community organizations, donations? How?
I can speak a little bit to that, and then I'll let Jolie speak to the part that communities and schools handles. We provide a variety of funds to fund the communities and school site coordinators primarily out of categorical funding, federal and state categorical resources, and they have an incredible fundraising infrastructure nationally at the state level and in Benton, Franklin County that over the long term should hopefully continue to defray some of those costs. And Jolie, if you'd like to speak a little bit to that model.
Yes, so we've received we received a significant grant from our national office that has allowed us to grow as quickly as we have because it really did support our infrastructure. We also just recently became recipients of some public safety sales tax dollars here in the community in Benton County, so that significantly helps us as well. And it just having that community support for what we do and just a better awareness for what we do and the type of programming that we deliver has been tremendous. And then we do all the normal things that nonprofits do, and we have events and we fundraise and we write for grants and we do all those fun things too.
So you guys are a nonprofit?
Correct.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to contribute, do you have a website or something like that?
We do have a website.
And I don't mean that to be cheesy. I'm just
Yep, you can find us on Google. You can find us through our Facebook page. There's all kinds of ways to find us.
Is it Communities and Schools?
Communities and Schools of Benton Franklin,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Do you guys get help from United Way?
We partner with United Way. We do not receive funding from United Way.
Okay. Well, gosh, thank you for the work you do, and thank you to your site coordinators for helping out. I'm sure there are other questions. I just had one. So one of your slides, you said over 2,000 students received school-wide services, and then there was some that received case-managed support. If you said what that was, I missed it. Can you?
So case managed support is the intensive individualized support that we can provide to students. So in order to do that, we have to have parent consent. And that means that all of our site staff has access to Power School so that we're tracking and monitoring student progress. So around a specific goal area. So for us, we have to choose an attendance behavior or an academic goal for every student that we're serving. And so when a student is referred for services, and we kind of get some background in a set, we know we've touched base with the kind of the key players within the building to determine if it makes sense to move forward with case management services for that student, or if they really just kind of need a couple of resources that will get them kind of back on track. Then the next step for us is to reach out to a parent, and we have to have signed consent from them to be able to obviously go into their academic records and be able to monitor their progress that way. So once we do that, then we're meeting with those students very intentionally. Sometimes it can be daily for periods of time, it can be weekly, monthly, whatever the individual case would dictate.
Thank you.
Sure.
So thank you also, as my fellow board members have said, for all the work that you guys do in partnering with not just our district, but the other local districts in Benton and Franklin counties. A question I had when we went to WASDA, and I've seen articles on this in our national school board journals. I think they got in there in U.S. News and World Reports, the Vancouver Public Schools. And so I went to a presentation that they gave, and they had in 8 to 10 years, they'd expanded communities in schools throughout their entire district, 30 schools or something like that. And I think, are they doing that all themselves, or are they using a conglomerate or an organization like you guys have, or did they take that all on themselves?
So I believe that Vancouver uses community schools, which is different than communities in schools. They're very similar, but they're not the same organization. So I can't really speak to what their growth strategy has been or anything, but it's a slightly different org.
Yeah, I'm just curious how we as a community and also Pasco can grow. I know you guys said that you have challenges in growing very quickly, but they seem to have grown very, very quickly. And they have other strategies, they said, like vans that go to sites that don't have it, like kind of moving sites to help. Maybe you guys have ideas, but I'm curious, how long would it take to be able to serve all of Pasco's schools if we believe that this is a valuable program? Because I know you're not just serving Pasco, you're serving
Correct.
a big community, but how many years out are we in order to serve all of our schools?
I don't know that I can answer that. I certainly wouldn't answer in lieu of my executive director, but I'll get myself into some trouble. But I think one key difference for what you're talking about as far as growth with community schools in Vancouver is it is a less individualized support that's provided through that program. So I know they have vans, and they're able to meet basic needs and take those services to schools or to remote sites. And that, my understanding anyway of the program is that it functions a little bit different.
They said that they have a site coordinator at every school now. I'm
So
just
they have,
curious
I
how-
think it's a family resource coordinator. And again, I can't really
Yeah.
speak to what they do because I'm not that familiar. I've just seen a presentation on what they do. But I don't know that the rigors of what they are monitoring with students that they're working with individually are the same as what we do. So in the sites that we're in, we can provide those school-wide supports to any student, to any family that comes through the door. But we don't have the capacity at this point to do that more remotely. That's something that could, depending on different funding streams, that could be feasible. But at this point in time, we're just trying to manage with what we have and growing with integrity and sustainability in mind. So.
And how do you prioritize schools within the Tri-Cities? Like, how is Chiawana prioritized over other Pasco schools, or how are Kennewick schools or Richland schools prioritized? What's the order of prioritization?
So because we receive a significant amount of funding from the districts that we're in, that is it's a collaborative process to determine that. So there's district input into that. And then one thing that has been important to us as we've grown is that we've established feeder patterns. So we want students that we start working with in elementary to be able to follow those students through their secondary experience as well, to see what the long-term impact of having that level of support is for students. So that's one area as we've grown that's been important to us to make sure that we are doing that. But again, it's a conversation and a collaborative decision between the districts and our agency.
Well, thank you for the presentation, the work you're doing. If there's any area that needs this type of support, it's our community. We have 3 cities, 3 separate school districts, separate in 2 counties. And so as a healthcare provider, this is a constant frustration of accessing services, the appropriate services, duplication of services in our community. And so something like this is very helpful. What is your interaction with healthcare providers? Because this is a great, if I have a patient that comes in and I know they go to Chiawana, well, then this is great now that I know I can, I know Ms. Gonzalez, I can say, well, here, call up my friend.
Yes.
Brenda Gonzalez, here's her number. I'd like you to work with her and encourage the mother, the parent, and the child. And do you know what I mean? So what's
Right.
the engagement? Because up to this point, I didn't know of.
And we'll take a referral from anywhere. I mean, it doesn't have to be from within the school. So, and then of course, if we are working or collaborating with outside partners, then we'll get releases signed and make sure that we can work with one another to best support that family. We also, I should say, for students that we are serving, if they have siblings in a school that we are not in, that we don't have a site coordinator presence, we're there to serve that family. And so we're going to provide some assistance and support that can serve younger or older siblings that may not be in a school that we are in. We can't provide case management because we obviously don't have access to their school records because we don't have a coordinator within that school. But we can work to make sure that we're connecting to the supports in the community that can assist. We also we want to make sure that our students that are preschool, our kids, siblings that are preschool age, are being directed to early childhood education. And so whether that's ECAP, Early Head Start, whatever program makes sense and that family qualifies for, that we want to make sure that our youngest kiddos are having access to those programs so that they are ready when they do land in kinder, that they're ready.
And another piece I'd just like to highlight right along those lines is we have a fledgling partnership with Comprehensive Healthcare Services providing direct therapeutic treatment, mental health services on 2 of our campuses. It's garnered quite a bit of interest from both state and federal legislators, and we'll be doing some showcasing of particularly the model at Curie, which is a really nice interplay between school staff, a half a FTE of comprehensive healthcare, direct therapeutic treatment providers, and communities and schools, and how they work together, I think is a model that is garnering a lot of interest outside of Pasco, and is something that hopefully we'll be able to capitalize on and replicate not only with comprehensive healthcare, but possibly with Tri-Cities Community Health. So there's a lot of really great partnerships, at least fledgling partnerships with medical providers underway as well.
Yeah, that's great. I really think that's an area that our community needs to improve on because we don't have good coordination. I didn't really know that, and I have a lot of patients at Curie. So if I have a patient that needs mental health services, I have no idea that that's occurring, and I'm on the school board here, and how to access that, and how we have people all the time, because almost every child in our community accesses healthcare, especially when they're younger. When they're older, maybe not as much, but at some point they usually do. And this is not, this is an indictment on all of us as a community, and part of it is the structure of the Tri-Cities, but we just do not do a good job at coordinating that. There's lots of little pieces that are great things, but we just have to do better, and I don't know how to make that happen, probably just more of this coming together, but a lot of people fall through the cracks, or they're getting services that are not communicated. We could save a lot of resources if it was more collaborative. Anyway, so hopefully I look forward to having more, and I'd be happy to kind of help represent the healthcare community. I work in Pasco, and so I would love to have more in my spare time. So the one, I like what you said about relationships too, and that continuity over time, because I think that's super important for the families to have that. So you said you have 27 or 26 site coordinators?
27 in 26
Tri-Cities. So what's the background? Do they all have degrees in social work? Is there a variety of backgrounds and
It's a whole
training?
variety of backgrounds, which is really great. We're just a network of professionals with a varied, such a wide variety of backgrounds that we're able to, and deep connections within the community. So there may be a situation that, our site coordinator, Emerson, might have a family come in with something, and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start or where to begin to make referrals to, or what resources to provide. But there's 26 other her peers who may have had a family in a similar situation, or in their previous experience or their previous work lives have had the ability to make some connections that would be able to assist in that situation. So we have, just a great network of people. So we do have, some of our staff have their MSWs, some of our staff have CPS backgrounds, some of our staff come from education backgrounds. So it's a whole variety of work experience that they bring to the table. So we're just really looking for those. When we are hiring for the positions, we're super intentional about it. And it has to be folks that are strong relationship builders. And kind of, as Brenda said when she was talking about the student that she and Erica were working with, we have students and we have parents that come to us that are really resistant. They're as awesome as we think we are and as great as the services that we provide are. It doesn't mean that everybody comes to us running with open arms. So just because we receive a referral doesn't mean that that's going to necessarily be welcomed. But we're not going anywhere. We're going, we're going to be there. We're on site every day. And so we're going to meet students and meet parents where they're at, and, respect the fact that if now isn't the right time, then we'll be here when the time does arise. And we don't want to remove anyone's ability to self-determine what's best for them. So, as we grow caseloads, as we gain visibility within the schools that we're in, as students and staff and parents talk about the work that we do, then we let that kind of speak for it, rather than trying to force something that somebody may not be ready for or may not want right now. So that relationship piece is huge.
And this is my last question. I'm sure I've been talking too much. So my last question has to do with how students qualify, if you will, for the case management services. So one of another failure of our system, and this is in our school district, is the system as a state or whatever healthcare system, is that we have families that if they have the state Molina or Medicaid, they actually get very good services at no cost, and they have access to numerous services. And the area that we often have more difficulty is a middle-class family that maybe has private insurance, but their copays or deductibles are so high that they don't actually access the services like speech therapy or occupational therapy, or something that their child desperately needs just as much as a lower-income family, but that has Medicaid. And so what is the criteria or qualifications, if you will, or if there are any, or is it not, there's no restriction based on income or ethnicity, or it's just...
No. There's no restriction. We do run into the same barriers that you're speaking of when we're, trying to make those connections outside. So that's definitely something that we run into, of course, housing stability and affordable housing and all of those types of things. So we don't pretend that we can solve or fix every problem that comes through the door, but what we can do is walk alongside students and their families as they're trying to navigate through some of those things. And just be that support system, be that person that sees that these kids that we're working with are so much greater and bigger than the circumstance that they're in. And so what can we do right now to help sort of change that trajectory and help them see a different future than what's facing them in the present? So there's no criteria. You don't have to be low income. There's nothing that predetermines whether a student can be served or not based on simply their demographics. It's just a matter of how intense or how significant are the barriers that are facing them, whatever those might be. And for a lot of our kids, it's significant mental health issues, or just being able to get through the day, or working through anxiety, or needing that place to be able to kind of reset throughout the day. So it's a whole variety of things that we see and that we're there to serve.
Are you guys, and I heard the coordinators use examples about working with the students themselves. What percent of a day, if any, is or day and evening is spent coordinating with the families of the students? Is a majority of it just students themselves, or are you coordinating with families?
So it's significantly heavier family engagement, the younger students that we serve. So at the elementary level, we have a lot more engagement with parents than we do at the secondary level. A lot of times the kids that are landing on caseloads for our middle, to some extent, and our high school site coordinators are kids that just don't have that support at home. And so they are always going to try to engage a parent, and they will continue to try to engage a parent when they're unsuccessful. We still have to have consent, until the student is 18, or if they are, an unaccompanied minor, we can serve them. But we'll always strive for that, but it's significantly less likely to happen at the secondary level. I don't know if you guys want to add to that at all.
I think, for the most part, I think we do a really good job in trying to connect with the parents and do a lot of home visits and really get to know the student and where they live and make the parent feel comfortable that they don't have to come to us, that we can go to them and we can meet with them wherever they feel comfortable. So we do try to engage with parents as much as possible. And I would add to that, they're really like, when we show up, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you guys were even here, or that you guys can support us in this way. So it's really nice to be able to incorporate them when it's possible.
And was the 2,000 contacts, is that Benton Franklin County or is that Pasco?
That was just Pasco.
2,000 kids or families were saying got touched at the 5 schools.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you very
coming and
much.
sharing that information with us. I guess, so we typically ask if there's anybody in the audience who wants to say anything to the board. This is your chance on this topic, so.
I have a quick example of communities and schools today.
Sure. Do you want to come to the microphone? We want to get you on camera.
Today, I had a student, it's a fairly new young student to our school, and my site coordinator happens to be out ill. And I really realized how much and how helpful she is today, because I was with this little guy that was having a major emotional outburst, meltdown, for probably 45 minutes, and he needed clean clothes, and he needed lots of support, and his mom needed lots of support also. And I just kept thinking, man, if Vanessa was here, she would be so much help for me right now and for this little guy and for this whole family. And I think that having our communities and schools site coordinator has really helped us be more proactive now with our extreme cases than ever before, when we have been just able to put a little Band-Aid on and hope things would get better. She has provided some relief for our counselor and really helped some of our really struggling families. So,
Thank you, Wendy, for sharing.
I've also been moved by the community and school spirit, so I just want to, just two anecdotes. Brenda and Erica have been a huge blessing to our students. Let me just share with you two of my favorite ones. We had a family whose house burned down, and the ladies were very instrumental in securing some temporary housing. And then when the family, when they got help to secure some more permanent housing, they organized some furniture and some other housing things with our staff, even to the point where Erica showed up to my house, because we just moved into a house and we got new furniture. So Erica borrowed her brother's truck, came on a Saturday to my house, loaded up a sofa, love seat, and couch, and we delivered it to this family. The other thing, the other awesome story is we had a family, unfortunately, their family was separated by deportation. The parents had to leave, but the students remained. But they couldn't have access to their home, and so they had to go live with another family. This was about 2 nights before homecoming. And so the girl didn't have a dress or shoes to wear to our homecoming dance. And Brenda took this girl shopping and got a dress and some shoes for her to wear on the Saturday homecoming. These are just some of the things that these awesome people are doing, providing a great benefit for our students. So thank you.
Thank you, John. All right.
Thanks for your service. We love hearing stories about this, especially with our students and their mental and emotional and physical needs, because they learn so much better when those things are met. So we really appreciate the service you're giving, and I anticipate this to probably be in a lot more schools in the future. So thank you.
Okay. So agenda item number 12, future agenda items.
So the future agenda items they currently show a study session on the growth monitoring framework and then another social emotional series presented by New Horizons High School. Those will really likely, if not definitely, change to reflect our need to be focusing pretty heavily on the boundary process. We will maintain Mark's presentation on the growth monitoring framework. We may need to be flexible about where we deliver that, maybe in a board meeting, not the study session. But over the course of the next few agendas, we'll need to really highly prioritize moving forward with some boundary decisions and updates. So while it's scheduled the way it is on the agenda now, please don't be disappointed if it changes. We just need to make sure that we're prioritizing Susanna's work around boundaries.
Okay, anything from the board that they would like to see on a future agenda that we need to make note of? All right. Agenda item 13, communications. Mr. Lehrman, would you begin for us, please?
Yeah, it was a great break for me and my family. I hope that the teachers and the rest of the district staff had a great time of relaxation and recovery for the second half push for the year, and hope you enjoyed your family and friend time. Right before the holidays, I guess, I spent time in a couple schools, mostly in order to support my students that I have at home. Went to some more McLaughlin basketball games and dance shows that they do at halftime during games. Went to a Christmas music band presentation at Livingston, and I have to say that the band teacher at Ruth Livingston is great, and very impressive guy, like many of our teachers here in this district. But just sitting there watching how he could get those kids to be engaged, to not be shy, to bring a lot of them out of their shells is a great example of teachers pushing students. He had, joke time where he handed out jokes to 20 of the kids that on the spot raised their hands to try and get them out of their shells and to do public presentation. And so in the background, they had jazz music going on, and these kids are up there reading the jokes. And these elementary school kids, many of them, I assume, were very nervous and apprehensive about that, but they volunteered because they saw their classmates doing that. And this guy just all throughout the evening, he was doing things to get those kids enrich their skills, both musically and just as students and children. So that was great. And also went to a gingerbread house making event over at Ruth Livingston that they had for all of the first grade classes. And it's great to see, as many of you know, the joy on younger kids' faces during the Christmas season, and all the laughing and smiling and fun that they had. So thank you.
Just another note on Livingston, they won the coats again, and this is year number 11 for collecting the most coats in the Tri-Cities. So that's amazing.
I also visited a lot of schools in December. It was fun to see the different concerts and plays, and had some breakfast events, and had a great time at those schools, and was able to visit all the schools last year in our district. And appreciate the principals and their hospitality and being able to visit their schools. I wanted to make one more comment about the community and schools, because this is really, I think, a vital piece of what we're doing and kind of our role as a public education system. Before I was even on the school board, one of our school counselors, I met with them, and they had typed out this thing and outlined how overwhelming it was to be a counselor and not be able to do all these things that they wanted to do for the students in their school that needed help. They wanted to do different prevention activities with the entire school to catch everyone to help, because nothing is better than preventing the problems before it happens as far as emotional behavioral struggles, and they have curriculum and things to do to help prevent that. And there was immense frustration at not being able to feel like she was meeting those obligations. And so I'm really appreciative of our district that they've actually devoted a lot of effort to that. Most of our schools now, I think we're calling it a behavior interventionist, is that right? Some behavior interventionist and a counselor, and now a lot of our schools have a site coordinator. So we really have the resources now to address and prevent a lot of issues with our younger children. I'm mostly talking about elementary school. We just need to make sure we're utilizing them correctly, because I think we have the resources now to make sure we're touching, that all the kids are receiving some social, emotional teaching, learning, engagement, and then the more focus, what she was talking about with case management, more intensive focus on the students that are identified as high risk. They receive more intense services to try to help them continue on and be successful. So I'm just very appreciative to the district committing to that, and now I think the next step is making sure we're utilizing those resources appropriately at our schools to get the biggest bang for our buck and make the difference in the lives of the most students.
I hope that everyone had a good break and that 2019 is another good year for everyone. This first week back was a little rough. My sleeping schedule is still messed up. I also want to thank the kids from Virgie Robinson for the little pizza boxes. That was really cute.
I also enjoyed the time off school, and I hope everyone else had a great break. And I'm excited to be back and to be heading into 2019. I agree with Isabel. It was a little hard adjusting back into waking up early, but I'm excited to see where things are going to go this year. And I also just want to mention that tomorrow's early release, so there will be a student council meeting after school.
Well, let's just say that I'm glad to be back too. I'd have to agree with these two ladies over here. Getting back to, a regular schedule, it was pretty difficult due to the binging Netflix shows for a while. But other than that, I'm sure 2019 will be the year for us. I hope these ladies are as excited and nervous as me to graduate this year. So, let's just hope it's the best and it doesn't go by too fast so we can enjoy it.
It's been interesting working full-time as a teacher through the holiday season. I've never done that before, and I've taken a long-term sub job again at Hanford High School teaching math, so that's my love, and so it's been fun to get involved. It always gives me a new perspective. I've taught elementary school now for 4 months, and I'll be here in the high school for 4 months, and it's just certainly, I think, enhances my role as a school board member, as I see a different side of things. It's really fun to get to know those kids and also realize how much these counselors, I sat there and wondered, because I do interface with some of these counselors, and wondered if I was interfacing with the school counselor, if one of these CIS counselors, because they really do provide a service to our families. So I, like Scott, have been in and out of schools for various kids' things. It's always wonderful to see the effort and time that goes in to the year end and the Christmas programs at our various schools. So thank you for your work, and thanks for all of you who stayed with us this whole time. It was a long board meeting.
Yeah, did you see that young man that was sitting out there? I mean, I don't know, what was he, 6 or 7 years old maybe? Endured this whole thing. So we have about another 5 days of safety, 6 days of safety, because the legislature goes into session starting next Monday. So it is that time of year, and this is the first of the 2-year cycle. So they'll be doing budgets and so forth, and probably be some not as big as impact on education as the previous years, but we can expect there's going to be some impact on education coming out of this session. So we will keep you, or try and keep abreast of that and keep you informed as we can. It's amazing what influence we can have. I think, and Michelle may talk about this, but the meeting she's had with the legislators and the influence we can have when we work collectively on keeping our legislators informed. So, and just another thing that, so coming up on the 18th, I believe, is the Chiawana Pasco triple header. Is that right?
Yeah.
Big night, so, and I'm not sure where it's at this year. Is it
It's
at
at
Chihuahua?
Chihuahua this year.
Okay, so, yeah, it's always a fun night to come and see these teams compete.
So I ended 2018 in schools and I began 2019 in schools. So before break, I had the opportunity to read You Can't Catch Me on the Gingerbread Girl book to some Livingston kindergartners, and then go back the next day and deliver a gift to the class, which was their first clue in finding the gingerbread man inside Livingston. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. It's like, like you were saying, seeing the holidays through the eyes of a kindergartner. I mean, there's nothing more precious. So that's what I did right before break. And then yesterday I was ready to come back to work, but not quite ready to go back to my office. So I hit McLaughlin and Chihuahua first thing in the morning, and I had the opportunity to listen to a guest speaker from the organization Character Strong in a full McLaughlin assembly, which it was so nice to be at a full McLaughlin assembly and actually not be in charge of it. It was fantastic. They used to make me so nervous when I was building principal. They're so enjoyable when you're not the principal. The gentleman was fantastic, and it really was around the lot of what we're talking about tonight around character development. And then I went to Chihuahua and spent some time in classrooms, and it was absolutely incredible. I did want to remind the board there's a CWASA board workshop on Thursday the 10th at the ESD. If you're interested in attending, please check with Jenny. And also highlight, I'll be at Starbucks on Court Street at 7:30 a.m. on Friday for a community coffee event for any and all that would like to attend. And then I'll also be doing a presentation at the Tri-City Hispanic Chamber. It'll be all three local superintendents focusing on, as organizations, what are we doing, innovative practices to elevate and launch our students, our Latino students, into the world after high school. So I'll focus on our bilingual expansion initiative. Dave Bond will talk about their new dual language school, and then Dr. Rick Schulte will talk about the impact of poverty to access to academics. So that will be on Thursday next week at 11:30. Or on the 15th, I think on the 15th at 11:30, if board members would like to attend, let me know, and we'll make sure you have a spot to sit. Red Lion in Pasco. It's every meeting's at the Red Lion in Pasco, it feels like. I did just, as a closure here, I apologize for a little bit of a lengthy share, but I wanted to share a quote that was given to me by someone who means a great deal to me over the break. And it's by by an individual who's a researcher out of the University of Houston, I believe, Brene Brown. She wrote the book Dare to Lead. And the quote says, "It takes courage to say yes to rest and play in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol." And I think it's an important quote for all of us. And the commitment that I've made to myself in 2019 is I've promised myself I'm going to rest and play as hard as I work. And so for any of you who need to put that sweater on, I offer you, and I thank this person who gave it to me a great deal for being a pivotal person in my life and giving me the exact words I needed to hear at the exact moment. So to a fantastic 2019 that's focused on balance. So there is a request for an executive session under RCW 4230-110-1G for the superintendent evaluation. You're expecting it to take 60 minutes?
Yeah. We shouldn't be any longer than that. So that concludes this portion of our meeting tonight. Thank you for attending. We will now recess into executive session.